ভাবছিলাম যখন তোমাদের ক্লাস শুরু হবে আর কি। Okay, I have started recording. So basically we'll be having live classes now for live sessions like this now for every class, and I'll be uploading the recording of this live session in the Google since you're already having problems in the Google Classroom. So I'm actually going to be uploading all the videos in my channel that I used for graphics, the same channel that I used for
হ্যাঁ
graphics.
হ্যাঁ ভাই ওটাই এটা তো ভালো হয় ভাই।
Okay, and the thing is this course unfortunately is a very mathematical type course, and this is not a kind of course that I can cover using slides and pre-recorded videos. I need direct participation. So this is that kind of course you can guess, like probability or math, typical math courses. So unfortunately we will have to have sessions like this for every class. Okay, and you I think you guys already noticed that your timing was changed for your classes. It's not 1 hour 15 minutes anymore, it's 50 minutes, and there are 3 classes per week. You noticed that, right?
জি ভাই।
Yeah, so our classes will be shorter, but we'll have 3 classes, so we'll have to cover topics in that way. So I wasn't planning on finishing a lot of topics by today. Wait, let me share the screen. Tell me if you guys can see this. Can you see the screen?
Yes ভাই, we can see.
Okay, so these are the things that I uploaded today in your Google Classroom. These 3 things. The course outline. Did you guys check it out, or still haven't?
I still haven't.
Yes, ভাই দেখলাম অনেক কনফিউজিং লাগলো কোর্স বেস মানে আউটকাম বেসড।
Yeah, you don't actually have to put much focus on these things. These course outcomes, these are just a kind of formality that the new accreditation system added for getting accreditation. IT is actually following this new format. We ourselves are not very we're not very sure about this, so we have to learn a lot of things in order to design these course outcomes and everything. But actually those are not the important things. The important things are these: the course contents, this one, and then this the weekly plan for the course content. So from here you can actually plan out your syllabus, and you'll know exactly what will be there before meet and what will be there after meet. So these are the things that will be there before week 8. Actually even these weeks are not correct. According to the new format there are supposed to be 16 weeks, but so we have to design it using 16 weeks, but we'll never actually get 16 weeks. I think your time is like 14 weeks, right? How many weeks are there? Did you get anything?
December.
14.
Okay, so whatever that is, I think it is 14 or at best 15. It will never be 16. So actually some of these things we'll have to cover faster so that we can cover it within 1 week. For example, this thing, convolution correlation, I thought that I was going to cover it in 2 weeks, but it's actually possible to cover it within 1 week. Anyway, so these are the things that will be there before meet. Typical introduction chapter, which we'll be covering today. Then in the next week we'll be starting with discrete time signals. Okay, you can actually see, check this out later on when you have time. I'll be uploading the course outline again in your Google Drive. Remember to give me the link in your Google Classroom. And okay, now let me start with these things. The first thing that you should know is that I gave 2 books, right? This is one of them. It's called Digital Signal Processing 4th edition by Proakis and Manolakis. This is the first book that I actually gave here. And the second book is the Scientist and Engineer's Guide to Digital Signal Processing. And this one's writer is Stephen W. Smith. I will be providing them again in your Google Class. I already uploaded in Google Classroom, but I'll be giving them again in your Google Drive. Okay, and so today we'll be starting with the first chapter, the introduction chapter, this chapter. So for this chapter, actually for the introduction part, we'll be using this book mainly. The first 2 chapters will be from this book. Okay, actually this book will not be there for much of our course. This first chapter, okay, and the second chapter, discrete time signals and systems, these two chapters will be covered from this book. That means introduction and discrete time signals. These 2 chapters will be covered from this book, Proakis and Manolakis, and the rest of all the chapters will be covered from this book. And from this book we'll be starting with chapter 5 mainly. Chapter 5 is linear systems. Here, these linear systems this is from this book, chapter 5. And also another thing, this first chapter from this book by Stephen Smith, from the Smith book, the first chapter, that is breadth and depth of DSP. This chapter is also included, although I won't be actually discussing it in my lectures because this is an entirely theoretical course. You can already guess what kind of questions may come from this. These are just filler questions, so that some extra marks can be assigned for those who cannot do all the maths. They can at least get some marks by giving these kinds of theoretical answers. Oh wait, Akib called me. Wait a minute. Hello, Akib. Walaikum assalam. আচ্ছা শোনো, আমি হচ্ছে ইয়ে করে দিচ্ছি, ওই আমি তো রেকর্ড করতেছি লেকচারটা, তো এটা পড়া দেখবো আর okay, so where was I? Okay, so this chapter from Stephen Smith, the first chapter is actually for self-study. These are all just typical theoretical stuff, the applications of DSP, this sorts of stuff. All right. For example, like audio processing, echolocation, all these things. These are just going to be useful for your theory. Only one question may come from this, or no question may come from this. This is just for theory. Okay, so this thing, this first chapter from Stephen Smith is will be self-study only for your exam. And from this book, we'll directly be starting with chapter 5, which is linear systems, which is our third week's content. Fourth week's content, linear systems. So that is what we'll start from here in this book. Is it visible? Can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so chapter 5, where is chapter 5? This is chapter 3. This is 4. I should put some bookmarks here for easier. Okay, so we'll actually be starting with this chapter when we start with this book. Before that, the first 3 weeks content will be from this book. All right, so is that clear? The content division, is it clear? From which
Yes.
book you'll be studying which part? Okay.
Yes.
So summary is that first 3 weeks content from Prologis Manologis, and then 4th week's content and everything onwards will be from next book, Stephen Smith. Okay, and now for the first book, actually you'll notice that when you actually read this book, you'll see that this book is huge. Per chapter content is actually a lot, and you don't actually have to study everything. I have marked a lot of things. You'll notice that when you scroll within a single chapter, you'll see that there are lots of sections that I've marked using that I've highlighted, okay, with yellow color. So these are the things that are actually going to be useful for your overall content and also for your exam. And most of the things that you'll need to know will be within these marked portions. So these are the only things you have to go through. There will be separate topics, like this is 1.1. There might be separate an entire topic, maybe 1.9, where you'll see that within that 1.9 there is not a single line that I have highlighted. So you'll know that that entire topic is actually omitted. That is not necessary at all. And I'll also be telling you that directly during the lecture. But in case you miss it, just remember that if you do not find something in this book, if you do not find something that is explicitly highlighted, then that means this is not necessary, or it is excluded from the syllabus. All right, so is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so you actually have to pay attention when I'm saying these things, so that you know exactly what the syllabus is, because otherwise if you want to study the whole book, it's going to be very tedious. The first chapter is actually very easy, but the second chapter of this book is quite huge, and there are lots of things that you might not understand, and many of those things will actually not be there for your exam. So you don't have to worry about that. If you just follow the marked portions, that will be enough. Okay, and oh wait, I think many students have already joined, right? I should be taking the attendance. Wait, let me stop the screen share. Okay, already 39 students are here. I don't know exactly how many students are in this elective course. So I'm going to start calling the roll and you guys should respond. ID 01.
Yes, sir.
ID 2.
Bhai, he just talked to you.
Oh yeah, Akib told me that he was moving to his home. Okay, okay, ID 03.
Yes, sir.
04.
Present.
5.
Yes.
Present.
6. Is ID 06 here? I guess not. 09.
Yes, sir.
Oh yes, another thing. I might not have. I actually copied this template from my graphics course. So some of you who were not there in the graphics course, I might not have your ID listed in my attendance sheet. So in that case, do notify me that you are not listed here. From ID 06 to 9, within this ID there is no one, right?
Sir, present, sir. ID 09.
Okay, ID 09 is here. 11.
Yes, sir.
13.
Yes, sir.
14.
Present.
15.
Present. Present.
16.
Present.
17.
Present.
18. Is there ID 18? Or is ID 18 in this course? I don't know actually. I'm guessing not. Okay, ID 20.
Present, bhai.
21.
Present.
24.
Yes, sir.
Bhai, ID 25.
Oh, ID 25 was not there. Then 20, there is no 26, right? 27, 28,
Yes, sir.
29,
Yes, sir.
31,
Present. Present.
okay, 32,
Yes, sir.
33,
Present, sir.
34,
Present, sir.
37.
Bhaiya,
Present, sir.
35.
Yes. There is 35.
Yes, bhai.
35. 37 was there, right?
Present, sir.
38,
Present, sir.
41,
Sir, I'm 40. I'm there.
41,
Present, bhai.
42,
Present, sir.
43,
Present.
44,
Present, bhai.
46. Is there any 45? I guess no. 46,
Present,
47,
Present.
49. I guess there is no 49. 50,
Present, sir.
51,
Present, bhai.
52. Is there any 52? 53, 57,
56 present.
6, 57, 59,
Yes, sir.
60,
Present.
61,
Present.
63,
Present, sir.
64.
Present, sir.
Okay, so I'm not actually going to be taking attendance like this in every session because this takes away a lot of time. I just did this for the first time so that I can enter the those who came new in this particular course. So from the next class, everyone is just going to be giving their attendance at the end as by inputting their ID in the chat thread, and I'll be saving that at the end of the lecture. All right. Okay, so let me move on back to the screen sharing.
So you do not call 69, 66.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait. There are some students from the Foreigner Brothers. Okay, I'll be adding your IDs now. Okay, can you tell me your ID? Your full ID?
1700410069.
1069. And how many are there from the Foreigner Brothers? Do you know?
No, sir. Actually, I don't know. Me too. I'm confused about.
I saw in the Google Classroom that there are 4. So are there any more in here who have joined?
Actually, I'm alone. Or maybe I confused. Maybe it's not my lab. I don't know.
Okay, so ID 69 is only here, and I do not see anyone else from the Foreigner Brothers in this meeting. I do see them in the Google Classroom, but not here. Okay, anyway, do confirm me whether they're in this course or not. All right, I'm keeping their IDs blank for now. Okay, so let me go back to the screen sharing. Okay, so can you guys see this?
जी भाई.
Okay, so we'll start with the first chapter, and like I said, from this book, you'll be mainly following these parts that I explicitly marked, so that you know exactly what is there in the syllabus. Okay,
In the course, in the index of this book, the chapter 7 is marked. Are we supposed to follow that?
where the chapter 7 is marked?
Chapter 7, sir, in the contents part
Contents.
of
From
this.
here.
No, sir. In the PDF.
Here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me check this. Chapter 7. Oh no, yeah, actually we won't be following it from this book. You can actually follow it from this book. It is written in more details here. This book is actually, like I said, every chapter is more detailed than the other book. This book is easier. We'll actually be following this particular thing, discrete Fourier transform, from this book. This is chapter 8 in here. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise coming from someone. Okay. Okay, so in this book, this is chapter 8, discrete Fourier transform. But in this book, it is chapter 7. So in any case, you can actually follow this book, the chapter 7 from this book, if you need more information or different kind of approach to the explanation. But mainly, the discrete Fourier transform will be following from this book. All right.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, and only the chapter 1 and 2 will be following directly from this book. So, okay, let me start with chapter 1, which is the introduction chapter. Even though this is introduction, there are things that you should know that some of these things are actually tough. So you have to remember. Not tough exactly. You read this already, but maybe you already studied this a long time ago. So you might have forgotten. So we start with what is signal. In signal processing, all we will deal with are signals. And in the first lab that I had with group A, you guys have already seen that we will represent signals using row vectors, right? From the lab's point of view. I mean, in MATLAB or Octave, we'll be representing signals as row vectors. So what exactly is a signal? We'll be defining signal as any physical quantity that varies with one of the one or more independent variables. So basically, it's like a function. All right. So it will take t or x and y or x, y, z, anything like that, and it will just map it to an amplitude value. So this is the amplitude value, and this is basically the function, the signal representation. Okay, and this can be single variable or this can be multivariable like this. So this is just similar to a function. And then we define what a system is. A system is basically a function of functions. So basically it takes a signal and transforms it into another signal. It performs an operation on a signal. So that is what we mean by a system. Okay, and now we move on to the classification of signals. Okay, first of all, we already know about one classification, that is analog and digital. We'll go over details in this later on, but now we talk about why we work with digital signals and not analog. So one thing, the very first point is that it allows flexibility into our system. So if you are designing a signal processing system and if it is analog, what will you be using? You will be using hardware, right? Like resistors, then converters, then logic gates, stuff like that. You already work with these things in your DLD course. So you know how tedious it is to work with these things. If you want to transform a signal or do some kind of operation like amplify it or suppress it or something, then you actually have to have a lot of physical components. So if it was an analog signal, but if you perform digital signal processing instead of analog, you do not actually need to have so many physical components. You have much flexibility in the design because you just have to change the code and the whole thing will be changed. But in case of analog, you need to actually have you have to change the physical components in order to change the system for a particular application. Okay, and the second point is that the tolerance value. In analog circuits, you have the resistors, which may show that it is 200 ohm, but it is not exactly 200 ohm. There are actually some tolerance mismatch here. I mean, even though it is 200 ohm, there will be actually plus minus 5% or some tolerance value error within that resistor. So you know that every such resistor will have some, since it is a physical component and there are some impurities mixed with it, so there will be some error in the calculation. So when this might not seem a lot, but when you use a lot of such resistors in a system, you'll see that all of these errors will add up and it will become huge. So that is why we do not directly work with analog signal processing systems. We transform it so that we at first perform ADC conversion, that is we convert to digital, and then we perform all this processing in the digital format instead of the analog, because in digital format we do not have any of these inaccuracies that arise due to tolerance values. Okay, and next point is that digital signals can be stored in either magnetic or optical media. Like you can easily store any kind of sound or movie or any kind of image or anything in hard disk or a floppy disk or a DVD drive. So all these things are possible for digital signals, but for analog signals this is not possible. And the final thing is that digital signal processing is cheaper than analog signal processing, because like I said before, you do not need actual hardware materials for this processing. You just need code, and you can change the code anytime you want, and you'll have a different system only by changing the code. So these are all the advantages that we need to consider for digital signal and why we use digital signal processing instead of analog. Okay, now we move on to the classification of signals. Actually, for this part, this is a bit so can you guys see this, or am I the only one who's seeing this? Can you guys see?
Yes, sir, we can see this.
Sir, we can say this.
So in we are talking about digital signals, but when you're talking about classification of signals, just consider normal signals. You don't know whether it is digital or analog. So just when you're talking about just signals, it can be divided into different types based on different criteria. So there are actually 5 criteria. Okay. 5. Okay. So there are 5 criteria. One is based on channel. Okay. Which and based on this we can have single channel or multi-channel. So this can be single channel or, well, it is difficult to write, multi-channel. Okay, and another criteria is dimension. So based on dimension, you can have similarly single or multi. All right. And so how do you actually know whether a signal is a single channel or multi-channel signal, or whether it is a single dimension or multi-dimensional signal? So okay, first let me actually point out all the criteria there are, then we'll move on to the next. So the next criteria there is based on time. Okay. And the fourth one is value or amplitude. And the fifth one is randomness. All right. Randomness. So based on dimension, you can have single or multi. Based on time, you can have continuous or discrete. And same goes for actually, this is same for this, and also value. This is the same for value. All right. So for channel, you can have single channel, multi-channel. For dimension, you can have single dimension, multi-dimension. For time, you can have continuous time, discrete time. For value, that means the amplitude, you can have continuous valued or discrete valued. And for randomness, you can have deterministic or random. Okay. So now we move on to, okay. So this will move with the, okay, if I scroll. All right. But I need to take care of this. So how do you actually know whether a signal is single dimension, single channel or multi-channel? So this channel thing is actually determined using how many independent signals are there for a particular signal. That means suppose you are defining a signal as 3T, and this S3T actually comes from 3 separate sources, S1, S2 and S3. This is capital S3 and these are all small s, or you can think of this as X1, X2, X3. So if there are 3 separate sources or multiple separate sources that are actually contributing for one particular signal, then this is a multi-channel signal. For example, an example is the audio, dual audio. When you are hearing a music or any kind of audio, which is a dual audio, you actually have 2 signals there. One is the that means for stereo signals, there are actually 2 signals there. Okay, 2 channels. So that is a 2-channel signal. That audio signal is a 2-channel signal because there are 2 separate signals that together create that particular hearing effect in your ear. And also similar to that is another example is given here. There is the seismic signal. For example, the seismic signals that are actually taken by the seismograph. Those are also example of multi-channel signal, because in that kind of signal there are actually different kinds of signals coming from different sources. Different instruments are measuring different signals, and together they are creating one signal. So that kind of signal is called multi-channel. And then what is multi-dimension? Multi-dimension is actually based on how many independent variables there are, not how many independent signals, but how many independent variables. For example, you can have one signal like I, X, Y. There are actually 2 independent variables, X and Y. These 2 independent variables are creating amplitude values within that signal function, right? So this I signal, that is the brightness function. In case of images, the brightness function or intensity function, that is an example of a multi-dimension signal. All right. So for multi-channel signal, you got the example that audio, dual audio. All right. And for dimension, the multi-dimension, you got the example as brightness, because brightness is the function of 2 variables. These are not 2 separate signals. This is one single signal, but this is coming from 2 variables, X and Y. Also, this can be 2 or more. This can be 3 variables. For example, in this case, if it was a TV movie or TV picture that showed different pictures in different time frames, in that case, that signal would be a 3-dimensional signal. All right. So this is an example of a 3-dimensional signal. Also, not just 3-dimensional. This is actually 3-dimension, 3-channel. It's a 3-channel, 3-dimensional signal, because 3-channel, 3-dimensional signal. Why? because there are actually three separate signals: IR, IG, and IB, and each of them are defined using three variables: X, Y, and T. So actually, what is IR, IG, and IB? You can already guess. These are the brightness values for red channel. This is for the brightness values for the green channel, and this is the brightness values for the blue channel. And together you get a color picture. The effect of these three channels together gives you a color picture. And also each of these channels are defined using three separate variables, which is why it's a three-channel and three-dimensional signal. So
Sir,
is it
what are these three variables for three dimensions?
three variables are X, Y, and T. X is these are just the coordinate positions. These two are the coordinate positions in the display device, and T is the time. These three values actually define one particular pixel brightness. So is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
How would we represent this in a matrix?
how would you represent this TV picture signal in a matrix?
Yes.
Okay. So you can actually show this using so S3. How was it defined? This was three separate signals, right? So just like that, this will actually be three separate signals. That means IR, IG, and IB. This will be three separate signals, and actually each of these signals, IR itself will be a row vector. You can think that this is itself a row vector, a signal of all the X, Y, and T values. For the different X, Y, and T values, you'll have an entire row of brightness values for the red channel, also an entire row of brightness values for the green channel, entire row of brightness values for the blue channel, and together you'll have this matrix of signals. So such a matrix, a 3x(n) matrix, will be a multi-dimensional multi-channel. This will be a multi-channel signal for sure. And also you'll know that this is also multi-dimensional. How? Because each of these values for IR, IG, and IB are actually coming from three separate variables: X, Y, and T. There are three independent variables that together define each of these position values in each of these groups. So is it clear how we are separating multi-dimension and multi-channel signals, and how in one signal can be actually both? It can be multi-channel and multi-dimension at the same time. So is this clear?
Just to recap, a multi-channel signal would be represented by multiple rows in a signal vector.
Yeah.
And for multi-dimensional signals, we would have essentially a function like IR XYT, in which the XYT value would be represented in a different row vector along this signal vector.
Yes. For example, this is a multi-dimensional multi-channel signal, but it is single dimension because there is only T here, right? But this IR, IG, and IB, these are not defined based on just T. These are defined using X, Y, and T. So that is why each of them are multi-dimension, and also this is multi-channel because there are three rows here. So this is how you actually differentiate between these two classes of signals. Okay, so
is it possible for us to extract just the T component from each of these signals and represent them as one-dimensional but multi-channel?
T component from each of them. What do you mean by that? From the TV picture, you're saying?
From the TV picture, yeah.
Okay, so if you remove the T, you are not going to actually be able to represent what can I say, a movie. You will have to represent the signals separately in the form of frames, just frames. But in this case, if you use the T, if you consider this as a three-dimensional signal, then this becomes not just independent frames, this becomes an entire movie. The whole signal can represent a movie. But if you just show it like this, okay. I can actually draw again.
Is it like if we remove the T dimension, all the frames merge together into one?
If you remove the T, yes, then you'll have things like for the IR, you'll have only X and Y, right? So you can only represent one particular frame's intensity value for the red channel. So so this signal is actually different from the previous signal that you said. This signal and this signal are two different because they're actually representing two different things. This one is representing this whole signal is actually representing an entire sequence of frames. That means it's a channel. Signal is for a movie. You can consider this as a movie. This one is just one frame. This signal is actually representing just one frame. This one is representing a movie. Only the red channel of the movie. This one is for the green channel of the movie. That means if you just used all these values to show the movie, you'll be getting the movie in the red channel. That means everything will be red. You'll only be getting the intensities for the red. So is that clear? But if you use this, you're only going to be getting the intensities for one frame of that movie, not that entire movie. So these two signals are two different signals basically. So is that clear? Okay. So let me move on to the next thing, that is dimension done. Okay. So now we move on to time. So you can also actually differentiate between different signals based on okay. So you can also differentiate between different signals based on time. That means it can be either discrete time or it can be continuous time. All right. So how do you actually differentiate between different time? For example, this is a signal, right? I mean, if you just plot the different values for the signal, then you get this particular signal graph. So consider that this signal was based on time, and this one and the values were that I'm placing here. These are the amplitude or V. So if the signal values are defined on all possible time instances, that means it is continuous. There is no gap. Then this kind of signal is called continuous time. And also, if it is defined on the y-axis, in all possible values of the y-axis, that means you can have values everywhere, in every point. It's not restricted that it can only have values here, then only here, only here. If it is restricted like this, then it becomes discrete. But when you can have values continuously in the y-axis, then this is continuous value. So this signal that I just showed here, this one is a continuous valued, continuous time and continuous valued signal. And actually you can have four kinds of signal with from here. You can have actually four kinds of signal. You can actually see this from here. Signals can be classified into four different categories depending on the characteristics of time and the values they take. So if you discretize them based on time, that means on the x-axis, then it becomes a discrete time but continuous valued signal. But then if you again discretize on the y-axis, that means it can only have values in this, and this. Then it becomes a discrete valued signal. So is this clear? The four kinds of ID69 is the part of this class. Okay, I'll be updating it later on. Okay, so is this part clear? The thing that I just said, the four kinds of categories that you can have. That is the continuous time. This is for time and this is for value. So you can have continuous time, continuous value. You can have discrete time but continuous value. You can have continuous time but discrete value, and you can have discrete time, discrete value. So are these four cases that can you visualize them? These four cases that can appear for signals based on time and value. Okay, and there are actually some names for these two special cases. I don't think you guys can actually see this. Okay, so C, this one actually means analog. All right, so continuous valued, continuous time signals are the ones we call analog signals, and discrete time, discrete valued, these type of signals are called digital. All right, and everything in between, these two are just intermediate conversions that arise when you perform the ADC or DAC conversion. So you get some intermediate signals. So these are the intermediate signals. From analog to digital, when you convert, you get these two phases, but ultimately you come here.
The middle two are basically the sampled signals, right?
Yes, these are the sample signals. When you perform analog to digital or digital to analog conversion, when you go from here to here, you actually have to go through these phases. Also, when you go from here to here, you also have to go through these two phases. but these are not actually that much important, because ultimately we move to either this or that, the continuous time continuous value or discrete time discrete value. So is this all clear? Is there any question regarding this, the differentiation of signals based on time and value? Okay, I am guessing not. So I'll be moving on to the next thing, that is randomness. So you can have signals, two kinds of signals based on random. Actually, you can actually read all these things from here. I've already discussed all these things. So here, the deterministic versus random signals. So based on randomness, you can have two kinds of signals. One is deterministic and other is random. So how do you know that a signal is deterministic? If a signal is deterministic, then it will be possible to represent the signal using a kind of mathematical expression, that is a function. For example, when I write y equals to x yt, suppose this is a signal yt equals to t square. So I just defined all the possible points of this signal. That means for all possible t values, I know what kind of signal amplitude I'm going to get. I just have to square it. So I know that what kind of amplitude values I'm gonna get. So when you can actually describe it using an equation like this, then you know that this signal is a deterministic signal. But if you cannot describe it using a single equation like this, then it is a random signal. So okay, can you guys just guess an example of a random signal? I mean, you might be thinking that there are no signals that we can actually represent using, I mean, there are no signals in real life that can be random, but they can actually be, and you can already hear one right now.
I mean, I guess heartbeat.
Okay, yeah, but actually heartbeat for one particular person, you might be able to get a lot of samples, and based on that you can maybe generate a statistical data that for this person, I know that this is the interval of his heartbeat, and I can actually get an equation for that. But actually no, the true random signal is speech, the one that I'm just saying. You can never get anyone's speech within a particular equation. You cannot define that at this particular time interval I'm going to get this particular intensity or this particular frequency. You can never define. So speech is a direct example of a random signal. Actually there can be more, but this is just one common one. Okay. Okay, so those were all about our signal differentiations. So next we move on to, okay, these all things are not actually included because you can already see that I haven't marked one single line within this entire section. So these are just different kinds of discussion of different kinds of signals. Actually, you can read this if you want, but this won't be necessary because you already know this. This particular thing, you already know from your intermediate level physics, right? A signal you can, a sinusoidal signal, this is the most basic form of signals. Continuous valued but discrete time signals. You can define using xn, an amplitude value, cos omega n plus theta. So you actually know this kind of representation of signals from your intermediate level physics, right? So is there anyone who were maybe in a different curriculum and who haven't seen this? Or have all of you seen this? So I'm going to guess that all of you have seen this. So, okay, and here what is omega? Here n is the signal sample value. I mean along the x-axis, the sample number is n, and omega is known as the frequency in radians per sample. You can actually consider this as 2 pi f. Omega equals 2 pi f, where f is the normal frequency and omega is actually the angular frequency. So you can also represent any signal, any sinusoidal signals in this format. A cos 2 pi f n plus theta. So you just represent, replace omega with 2 pi f, nothing else. So how do you actually know that it is periodic? A signal is periodic. So a discrete time sinusoid is said to be periodic only if its frequency is a rational number. That is, you can, and that period, that particular thing has a quantity called a period, and it's called n. We are representing it using n. So that period will be n if for if you just add any sample with n, you're going to get just xn. Xn plus n is equals to xn for all n. If that happens, then you know that n is the period there. That is, for example, what is the period for sine, the sine function? If x was the sine function, then what would be the period for sine?
Pi.
Yeah,
Pi.
I mean, for after every pi values, you'll get the same value, right? If it is sine 0, then if you just perform sine 0 plus pi, that is sine 180, then you're also going to get the same value that you got for sine 0, right? Sine 0 is 0, sine 180 is also 0, then sine pi is also 0, right? So that is what I'm saying. So this value that you had to add, that means the value after which the signal values are repeating. So that particular value is known as the period. And actually that value can be different. I mean, there are actually infinite such values. Just like pi is a value, pi is the period for, pi is actually not the period, pi is the fundamental period. So this is what we mean by the fundamental period. Fundamental period is the smallest such value for after which you get the repeating. That means for sine it is pi, but actually every multiple of pi will also give you the same result. Sine pi, sine 2 pi, 4 pi. That means every multiple of pi will also give you the same thing. That means after every multiple of pi, you'll get the same value. If you got sine 30 and sine 30 by sine 30 maybe sine pi by 4 plus pi, you're going to get sine such a value that will be the same as sine pi by 4.
Yeah, for sin and cos it was 2 pi, and for tan it was
2 pi.
Yeah, for different kinds of functions it is different, but the thing is that there will always be one period that is fundamental. That means this is the smallest such value after which you get the repeating signals. So that smallest such value is known as the fundamental period. So, and there is actually a proof, even though you want, this is very elementary. I don't think I need to actually explain what is happening here. The periodicity property, you can see it from here. For any signal with frequency f0, you can actually get that n will be, if n is the period, then you'll have f0 equals to k by n, where k is just any multiple. That means you should be able to represent the frequency of that signal as a rational number. So this is why it was saying that a sinusoid is said to be periodic only if its frequency f is a rational number. So this is the proof for that. So that frequency will be a rational number if it is periodic. That means if it is periodic, there will be a period like n, capital N, and if you use that capital N, you'll be getting this value again. After every n, you'll be getting this value again. And so this finally boils down to the fact that you'll have something like this: cos of this angle equals to cos of this angle. So you can actually simplify it using trigonometric relations and get up to this relation, and from here you can get that f0 will be a fraction of two co-prime numbers, and these are actually this represents that this is a periodic signal. Okay, and another thing that you need to see, that you need to observe, is this particular thing that for n, this n you can actually change greatly. Actually, you can, for a very small change of f0, you can see that for a very small change of the frequency, you'll get a large change of n. Or in other words, in the reverse way, you can say that you have to change this n a lot just to get a small change in the frequency. So here is an example of that. Suppose you have f1, that is 31 by 60. All right, and you have f2, that is 30 by 60. The difference between these two is very minute, right? It's very small, but the difference between their corresponding periods, that is n1 and n2, are huge. n1 is 60, but n2 is 2. Can you see why? Actually, you'll actually have to think that not always the denominator is the period. You have to perform elimination between these two, and the final result that you get, that means when they are co-prime, then the denominator is going to give you the fundamental period. In this case, the fundamental period is 60, and in this case, even though this is 30 by 60, you can actually eliminate these two. You can divide these two, and you get 1 by 2. So n2 will be 2 here, and n1 is 60 here. So can you see that for a very small change in between f1 and f2, you're getting a very large change among the fundamental period. So this is just an example that I wanted to show you this. Okay, and another thing you have to see is that for discrete time sinusoids, you get the highest rate of oscillation when omega equals to pi. I mean, we already said what discrete time sinusoids are. The very basic kind of sinusoid signal, that is cos and sine. These are the very basic sinusoid signals. And for them, the highest rate of oscillation is obtained when omega equals to pi or minus pi, which is equivalent to having the frequency as half or minus half, because f is just 2 pi, omega is just 2 pi f. So f will become half or minus half. So these things, you can actually get this relation directly from before that you already know. Okay, and these things you don't actually have to see. This harmonically related complex exponentials, these things are not included. You can directly skip to here, the analog to digital conversion and digital to analog conversion. Okay, and I think you already have seen this thing, right? In your which course? I think in your computer networks course, you have already seen this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you already know. This will be easy for you to understand. So we start with analog signals at the beginning. Why? Because
I guess the time is over. We have labs after 2 minutes.
oh yeah, time is actually over. Okay, so in this class we didn't have much time because we had to take the attendance, and there were some issues regarding the explaining of these things, these materials. So from the next class we'll be actually proceeding faster. And okay, I've already taken your attendance, so that won't be an issue. Okay, so we'll be ending the meeting here today. We'll be actually remind me to start from the analog to digital conversion from the next class. All right, so we've completed up to this part today. I'll be stopping the screen share.